Hi there! Welcome to the Life Skills Leadership Summit. I am Justina of Just Classical. I am a homeschooling mom of 3 blessings. Today I am going to talk about music and leadership, so let me give you a little bit of my background regarding music. I am a lifelong musician from a family of musicians. I grew up playing a little piano, cello, and eventually focused on the oboe, playing in my school band, a woodwind quintet and youth orchestras, college band and orchestra, and in community orchestras after college. I still play oboe in my church orchestra. I also sang in choirs from elementary school through college and participated in musical theater throughout my school years, including performing the part of Maria in West Side Story. In college, I had the opportunity to play oboe as a soloist with our college orchestra. I got my degree in music therapy, worked in that field for a few years, and then started my own business teaching early childhood music for almost 20 years. My children participated in music since they were in the womb, since I was teaching early childhood music classes through my pregnancies and their early childhoods. Once I started homeschooling, I also began to write songs to help them memorize all kinds of information, since we were focusing on memory work in classical conversations. I have also written a music appreciation course for families called The Composer Detective. Now, I don't say all this to brag, but just to give you a little background of the extent I've participated in music and how from many different angles I can see how music is the perfect avenue for developing leadership. First, let's ask, what are some important aspects and qualities of leadership? Well, good leaders must be listeners and able to communicate. They must understand teamwork and be able to collaborate with others. They should manage their time well and be able to manage others well. In managing others, they need to be able to recognize talent, inspire others to be their best, and provide the support others need to continue to grow and achieve excellence. Leaders also must be able to adapt and be flexible. Leaders also should have vision and a plan for fulfilling the vision. And a leader should understand that everyone has a role, and when all the roles perform together, a beautiful work can be accomplished. Now, this is a limited list. I'm sure there are other aspects of leadership I have not mentioned, but let's look at how participation in music develops these qualities and prepares children to be leaders. So first, leaders must be listeners. Well, music begins with listening. Long before they can perform, young children first are exposed to listening to music. One can enjoy music one's whole life through listening, and one can learn to listen well and develop discipline through listening, learning to sit still and listen, developing attention span by listening to shorter pieces and then progressing to longer pieces. And if one does play an instrument and performs, one must learn to listen to the other players in the ensemble. Listening is a cornerstone of development and leadership, and music helps develop listening skills in future leaders. Also, another aspect of leadership is that leaders must be able to communicate. Involvement in music is all about communication, giving and taking, listening and adjusting. Even a soloist usually has an accompanist. Now, picture a singer with a pianist accompanying her, and though the accompanist follows the lead of the singer, they usually rehearse together before a performance to talk about how fast the piece will go, when the singer should come in after the introduction, and how long the singer is going to hold that last high note. During the performance, the singer will lead with body language such as the nod of head or quick breath, or the accompanist will give a bigger movement with his arms after a pause in the music. Or take the example of an orchestra which has a specific leader in the conductor. The conductor sets the tempo as he waves his hands or baton, gives instructions during rehearsal, about the type of sound, volume, and blending of instruments he wants in this section of music, brings out the emotional interpretation of the piece of music, and so much more. Each musician must respond to the conductor and the other players too. For example, if the brass section is overpowering the melody in the strings, the melody will be drowned out. Each player must blend with her section of instruments and the orchestra as a whole, and bring out her part at the right time. This requires listening, communication, and leadership qualities on the part of each musician, so the orchestra can present a uniform and polished piece for a pleasant experience to an audience, not disjointed, unpracticed cacophony. So, leaders must be able to communicate, and they can develop this skill by being involved in musical ensembles. Leaders also understand teamwork and collaboration. Performance in an ensemble involves teamwork and collaboration, as I brought out already. Truthfully, every musician in an ensemble is a leader, not just a conductor, for there are the leaders of each instrument section, that is, the first chair or soloist part if a piece has a solo for that instrument, and even the other players in a section are leaders in exhibiting self-control to only play when assigned and to blend with the other instruments. Some ensembles, like a string quartet or jazz band, don't have conductors, so leadership is shared. The players must work together in a consensus of trust as they rehearse and perform, sharing ideas and listening to each other. As Dominic Aldis, the CEO of Music and Management, says, "Great jazz is all about how we interact. It's about empathy and trust. It's about listening and supporting the other players just as much as it is about taking the spotlight." So music is the ideal opportunity in which to build the leadership skills of teamwork and collaboration. Also, leaders must manage their time well. Now, music participation develops time management skills because learning to play an instrument requires a great deal of time to be spent on practicing individually and rehearsing with a group. A musician must learn to use time wisely to fit in the practicing, so this prepares a musician to be a leader. Also, leaders need to be able to manage others well. It might be better to say that leaders need good interpersonal skills because in managing others, they need to be able to recognize talent, inspire others to be their best, and provide the support others need to continue to grow and achieve excellence. Involvement in music requires interacting with lots of other musicians, so even if one isn't the conductor or leader of the group, a musician learns relationship skills and to manage those relationships, roles, and expectations in light of the musician's own role. For example, a violinist in the second violin section can observe the work ethic, attitudes, and talent of the first violin, called the concertmaster, and aspire to grow and get better, or reject the pride seen in some of those musicians. Older and more experienced musicians can put aside competitiveness. Yes, music is a competitive sport in some ways, to mentor and encourage a younger musician to improve skills and musicality. Participating in musical ensembles certainly helps grow relational skills for aspiring leaders. Next, leaders must be able to adapt and be flexible. Performing and improvising in music require flexibility, innovation, and adjusting expectations. Some genres lend to understanding flexibility better than others, such as jazz, where the music is in a continual state of change, and the musicians do a lot of improvisation, that is, making up the music on the spot. Music is an ideal breeding ground for being able to adapt as a leader. Also, leaders should have vision and a plan for fulfilling the vision. An obvious leader for musicians is the conductor, who suggests the interpretation of the music and leads the group through a composition and rehearsals and performances. Sitting under the direction of the conductor or music teacher, a musician can watch and learn about planning and fulfilling a vision of how a musical piece will go, or a whole set of musical pieces will go in a concert. There is the choosing of the pieces and the rehearsing of the pieces, which involves spending enough time on the difficult parts, but not just working on parts because the ensemble needs to run through a whole piece so it is concert ready. There also needs to be a balance of time spent on each piece so that they are all rehearsed. A music director or assistant to an orchestra or choir will also need to book a hall for the concert and take care of details of chairs, stands, large instruments, or other details for the musicians to be able to perform a concert. There are a lot of details that go into music lessons, rehearsals, and performances. So being part of a musical ensemble helps develop the leadership skills of vision and planning to fulfill that vision. Next, leaders understand that everyone has a role, and when all the roles perform together, a beautiful work can be accomplished. What better example of this is there than a musical group? While a professional orchestra may be made up of some of the most talented, dedicated musicians in the world, each player needs to set aside his or her own ego for a time to play with the other musicians. Each player cannot play like a soloist all the time, for there has to be blending and dynamics, and melodies and harmonies need to be brought out at different times to make a piece an enjoyable listening experience for an audience. Pieces that are beautiful works or beautifully performed are that way because each player understands his or her role to perform together, not just toot their own horn, so to speak. So each person in the ensemble, not just the conductor, is demonstrating leadership skills by fulfilling his or her role in the ensemble. What are the other skills that participation in music builds in leaders? Certainly, performing in an ensemble and as a soloist builds confidence to get up in front of others. Also, participating in music develops sensitivity to the needs of others as one responds to the emotional side of music and learns to play music with sensitivity and expression. There are so many more aspects to music that makes participation in it, even just by listening and developing listening skills and sensitivity, such a valuable environment for developing leadership expertise. Music is such a great place to develop leadership skills that a man named Dominic Aldis founded a company called Music and Management. He does workshops for companies in which they listen to and interact with an orchestra or string quartet or jazz band to learn business principles of leadership. He says, musical experts and business experts are concerned with so many of the same basic issues: performance, excellence, teamwork, and trust. So, how can you get started with music, the perfect avenue for developing leadership skills? First, expose your children to great music through listening. Learn about music, about singers and choirs, orchestras and composers and conductors, different kinds of instruments, different genres like classical, jazz, rock, and country. Second, sing with your child and have your child get involved with a choir. Third, have your child take lessons on an instrument and be part of ensembles like bands and orchestras. I'd love to help you with my first suggestion of exposing children to great music through listening and learning about orchestral instruments and composers. I have a music appreciation course for families called The Composer Detective. Even if you don't have a music background, and especially if you don't know where to get started, I help you lead your children through investigating the orchestra and 9 composers and their music in this course. So please check out my music appreciation course, The Composer Detective. You can buy the full course or unit, and if you want a great place to get started, and check out the course, start with a unit called Investigating the Orchestra. Also, if you just want to get an overview, grab my free guide, The Quick Start Guide to Teaching About the Orchestra. I will link everything in the notes. Thanks for listening. I'm Justina from Just Classical. And now, I'd like you to meet my alter ego, Handel, that is George Friedrich Handel, who will tell you a little bit more about the composer detective.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Guten Tag, I am George Friedrich Handel, the German Baroque composer. Perhaps you have heard some of my music? I am known for water music and my many operas and oratorios, such as Messiah, which is where the Hallelujah chorus comes from. More importantly though, I am the guide in the music appreciation course, The Composer Detective. You see, I want classical music to be interesting for people of all ages and to bring composers to life. You and your children can watch my biography and the biographies of other great and influential composers as I interview them in The Composer Detective. You can also see performances of some of the best music of these composers by talented soloists, famous conductors, and renowned orchestras in videos I have selected just for you. And do your children like to color, draw, do word searches or crosswords? I have those in a special student activity pack just for students. And for parents and teachers, don't worry. You don't have to know about classical music and instruments and orchestral eras and what pieces to listen to. I provide it all for you in teacher notes and lesson plans. And we sneak in history and geography so your child is learning so much more than music. Be sure to get The Composer Detective so you can spend more time with me, George Friedrich Handel, and other great composers.